This is what remains of the inner defense line of the British forces. In 1783, the local citizens tried to level it, but failed. And then when the Civil War came along, it was actually reused again for the Civil War. Thank goodness that it has been, as much of it has been maintained for us to remember our history.
Yeah.
Okay. This reconstructed line of earthworks replicates a French artillery battery of the Allies' first siege line. General Lane was falling on the night of October the 6th, 1781, as 1,500 soldiers quietly began constructing these fortifications, following a row of pine strips laid out by the engineering officers. Now, 2,800 soldiers with muskets silently stood guard in case the British heard them and assaulted. The British troops manning the left or eastern portion of the British inner defense line remained unaware of the Allied soldiers to their front, enabling the Allies to work all night without interference. By dawn, American and French troops stood safely behind their first siege line. Over the next 2 days, they completed the battery positions for the heavy artillery. Major General Henry Knox, Washington's chief of artillery, called that the first parallel. Imagine this. On October the 14th, on a moonlit night, American and French forces assault Redoubt 9 and 10, which is British. They didn't load their weapons because they were afraid that the British would detect them. The password was Rochambeau. Americans translated to Rush on Boys. Needless to say that after this battle, a white flag was raised on October the 17th. Okay, this area is where the Redoubt 9 and 10 was located. And something that we all have to think about is that the Americans and the French had been shelling these areas for days. So a lot of damage had been done. And if you look how these things are made, you almost, climbing up over those. Okay, think about this. When the Americans and the French stormed these, they were going over with their weapons unloaded. They were going over knowing that this was going to be a hand-to-hand combat. But in order to gain our freedom, they were more than willing to do it. And I have to tip my hat to the French, because if they hadn't have joined sides with us and been an ally with us, we probably would have never made it. Imagine being in such a small space. Of course, our troops get into this every time they turn around. But during the Revolutionary War, they were dug in. They knew they weren't going anywhere. The Americans and the French were so busy shelling. And the Brits didn't have anywhere to go. So they were just in hopes that at some point they would manage to shell enough back at them that the Americans and the French would leave. Didn't happen. This is the area that the Americans and the French would have charged into. And so the Brits were locked in a battle that they couldn't win. Because the thing of it is, the Americans were fighting for freedom. We wanted our freedom. We still want our freedom. We'll always want our freedom. So we had more of an incentive than the British ever did.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, folks. I want you to know that I totally mistreat him. I wanted a picture of the two of us hugging this tree. Okay? So he kept trying to move, and I kept fussing at him. He said, but you got me in the poison ivy. Can anybody look at that
It's a three-leaf.
and tell me what that is?
Three-leaf.
And he's not allergic to poison ivy or poison oak. See what I have to go through? We're at Yorktown, Virginia. Yorktown plays a very, very important part in American history. It's basically the birthplace of independence. What began as a minor skirmish for freedom ended in this location. From September the 28th, 1781 to October the 19th, 1781. The actual, I think, what I would consider the birth of the nation was here. Because of the Americans and the French, our allies. They fought a tremendous battle here. A battle we can only read about and think about. I know I'm being a lot more serious with this video, but I think it's important, especially at this time. So I hope everybody kind of pays attention. Our freedoms are so important, and so many people gave their life for us to have it. This, what you're looking at here, they call it Surrender Field. And after 6 long years of war, both armies were exhausted, the British and the Americans. The British were in hostile territory. The Americans were at home. So in a sense, they had a home field advantage. For the colonies, the struggle for independence was creating a major toll for both armies. General George Washington and French Lieutenant General Comte de Rochambeau marched on Yorktown to strike a decisive blow to the British, who were commanded by General Charles Lord Cornwallis. Allied armies marched hundreds of miles, making theirs the largest troop movement of the American Revolution. September the 5th, while the Allied armies, which is the Americans, were marching to Yorktown, the French fleet was guarding the entrance to Chesapeake Bay. The British Royal Navy was getting ready to head up the Chesapeake with the intentions of resupplying Lord Cornwallis. It was a major battle with the British going home in defeat, which set the stage for the American freedom that we enjoy today. Lord Cornwallis surrendered to General George Washington. The French were waiting at the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay because they knew that the British were going to have to come in to resupply Lord Cornwallis. The battle was won by the French. Navy was sailing up the bay, and now the battle is known as the Battle of the Capes. Once again, I have to tip my hat to the French and say thank you. Rumor has it that with all the shelling that was going on by the French and the Americans, that Lord Cornwallis moved his headquarters to a nearby cave. Rumor has it that this is the cave. Rumor also has it that he actually hid in here after his surrender to the Americans and the French. It's rather cold. Okay, all this history. Oh, but what we're fixing to do is also history. Anyway, with all this history, I want to kind of mix it up just a little bit. So, and I just sprung this on, but so there's no telling how this is going to turn out. Some little tidbits about Virginia. Number one, they didn't start out growing tobacco. Who knew?
Virginia gave birth to
West Virginia and Kentucky.
yeah, that's true. Gave birth.
Virginia gave birth to West Virginia and Kentucky. Who knew? There is an island where wild ponies roam wild. Who knew?
Virginia is known as the mother of presidents.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Who knew? I'm not going to ask you who they are.
Yeah.
Or do you want to tell us?
You can't swear on the phone?
And how many of you break that law? Who knew?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of people be in trouble. Especially at those phone calls wanting to renew your warranty on your car.
That's right. So, there's a little bit of who knew, and you never know what you're going to get with us.
Yeah, especially
Who
her.
knew?
Who knew?
Who knew?